Hello everyone, I'm Don and welcome to my kitchen. Today I got a real treat for you. Every time I make this, people go absolutely crazy for it. It won't last a day in your house. We are going to make blueberry cheesecake and it is out of this world. So let me go through our list of ingredients. So we have 3 parts here. First we're going to make a blueberry puree, which we have 2 cups of whole blueberries, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Then we're going to make the crust. We've got 1 1/4 cup of crushed graham crackers. We've got 1/4 cup of sugar, and we got 6 tablespoons of melted butter. And for our filling, the main ingredient is cream cheese. So we've got 4 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, 1 whole cup of granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flours, 1/4 cup of sour cream, and 2 large eggs. So let's get started with the puree. It's best to do this in a small food processor. I have a large one and it didn't work out quite as well in there, so I also happen to have a small one. So we're going to go ahead and puree our blueberries. Now with the small one I can't get them quite all in, so I'm going to do half at a time. And what we want to do is puree this down to a very fine consistency. Now I'll go ahead and add the rest of my blueberries. Okay, so our blueberries are very well pureed. I'm going to go ahead and take my blade out. Now what we're going to do is take a small saucepan and we're going to add our blueberry puree to it. And you want to obviously get all of that goodness out of there, as much as you can. Okay, so we're going to put this on the stove top and we're going to turn it on like a medium low. And we're going to go ahead and add our 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and our 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. And I'm going to give it a stir. Now we're going to let this come to a boil and then we're going to let it cook down a bit, and it's going to get kind of syrupy with the sugar and the blueberry mix here. Okay, while that's cooking down, we're going to go ahead and move on to our graham cracker crust. So we've got our 1 1/4 cup of crushed graham crackers. We're going to go ahead and add our 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and then we've got 6 tablespoons of melted butter, which I already had melted in the microwave. You could do it on the stove top, however you see fit. And what we want to do is we want to mix this up, and I usually just take a whisk, and we want to work that butter and sugar all through the graham cracker crumbs, and you want to get it to a consistency of a wet sandy mix. So if you go to the beach, you know what that is. And I also have a video that's dedicated to making graham cracker crust for cheesecakes, and I made, you could always go and look at my cannoli cheesecake recipe. It's essentially the same crust, a little bit different proportions. I think that one had 1.5 cups of graham crackers versus 1.25 cups here. That one we wanted the crust to come all the way up the sides of the cheesecake. This one, not completely. So once you get that good and wet, which we are, we're going to use a 9-inch springform pan. Now I've taken some precautions and I've wrapped the bottom of this with aluminum foil in the off chance when it goes in the oven that if it leaks, as you know, a spring foil pan is 2 pieces, that it's not going to get all over my my oven. And actually I'll put a baking sheet underneath of it as well, just to as a precautionary measure. So I'm going to take all my wet crumbs and I'm going to go ahead and put them into my springform pan. And then you just want to take this and you want to spread it across the bottom and start patting it. And you do want to bring it up the sides, and I just bring it up about 1 inch, and probably about 1/4 of an inch on the bottom of the pan. Now this recipe, we do not bake this crust. In the cannoli cheesecake one, if you've seen that or you go back and watch it, we actually bake the crust for about 8 minutes in the oven. Quite frankly, I've made this cheesecake several times. I've not really seen a difference between doing it this way or baking it. They both come out absolutely wonderful. Okay, so we are pretty much done setting up our... Now that butter will, as it gets cooler, obviously it's going to set up in this crust. And I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and I'm going to go take a minute and I'm going to clean up a little bit, and we're going to get started on our filling. I can see our blueberry puree is starting to simmer, which is ideal, so I'll be right back. So I went ahead and cleaned up a little bit. We're going to get started on the filling. Our puree is simmering very nicely. We're going to let that simmer for a bit and cook down, and then it's going to have to cool just a little bit. I don't wait till it's all the way cold to move on, but we're going to go ahead and move on to our filling. So in a stand mixer with a beater attachment, I'm going to go ahead and take this off so we can get a better look at it. We've got our 8 ounces of Philadelphia cream cheese, or any brand that you choose. I tend to fall back to the Philadelphia brand. And then we're going to add our 1 cup of granulated sugar. Now we're going to take this and go ahead and get it onto the stand mixer. And we're going to beat that together first before we move on to our other ingredients. Now you want to let your cream cheese get to about room temperature, so I took it out earlier and it's softened up considerably from the state in the refrigerator. So I'm going to start out with it on very low and let that start to get that sugar and the cream cheese all mixed together. I'm probably going to have to stop it from a little bit from time to time and get some of that off the beater. So now we're going to go ahead and add 1 egg at a time. And we're going to go ahead and beat the 1 egg in. And you can see that now we got some, got the moisture and the liquid of the egg in there. It's starting to really cream up, and that's what we want. I'm going to go ahead and add my other egg. Now I'm going to go ahead and add, we got 1/4 cup of sour cream. And 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. Go ahead and mix that in. It's already smelling pretty good. I'm going to cut the heat back. In fact, I'm going to cut the heat off. This has been simmering a little while now, and we're going to let that cool. And finally, we're going to add our 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And we've got 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. And you just want to get it thoroughly mixed. No preset time to do this. But one thing I do want to do is go ahead and scrape down the sides and go ahead and run it through again. All right, so now all we have to do is wait for our blueberry puree to cool down, then we add it, and we'll fold that in, and we'll go ahead and add it on into our crust, into our pan. And now I have got my oven preheating at 325 degrees, and that is going to be the baking temperature. This is a lengthy process. This is not something that you're going to be instantly satisfied with. For one, it bakes an hour and a half in the oven, and then after it bakes, you shut your oven off and you prop your oven door open and actually let it in the oven for 1 more hour. And then once it comes out, it needs to chill. Actually, you'll put it on your warming rack or cooling rack. Let it cool down somewhat, and then into the refrigerator. So it's almost a 2-day process with this, but it is so worth it. I promise you, it is so worth it. It is absolutely delicious. So we'll be back as soon as the puree is done cooling to a reasonable temperature, and go ahead and add it to our mix. Get the cake put together and get it in the oven. All right, see you soon. So what we've done so far is our blueberry puree is simmered for about 10 minutes. I took it off the heat and let it cool. It's probably not room temperature, but it's not steaming anymore. And then I've taken our cream cheese mixture, our batter for our cake, out of the mixer and kind of cleaned up a little bit. So now we're going to go ahead and add the puree into the cream cheese batter. And you want to obviously try to get as much as you can out of your pan. I gotta tell you, it smells really good. If you like blueberries, and I do, you're gonna love this. And you could probably blend this in with your mixer as well, but I had a little incident one time where the blueberry spattered. It got onto my butcher block top here, and I had a bit of a undertaking to get that cleaned up. So I'm just going to fold it in by hand. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and get our graham cracker crust, and it's set up pretty nicely. It's pretty firm. And we're going to go ahead and just add our blueberry batter. And I'm just going to take and even it up here. Okay, so I had mentioned my oven is preheated at 325 degrees. So when you set up your oven to start, you want to have one rack in the middle and one rack at the bottom. You're going to put a cookie sheet or a baking sheet in on the top rack, and that's what your cake is going to sit on. And then you're going to take a baking dish, and I have a small baking dish, and put about 1 inch of water in it, and you want to put that on the bottom rack, and that creates steam in the oven. So you want to keep the oven closed during the whole baking process, and it will take the full 1.5 hours in the oven. And once you hit your 1.5 hour mark, you should take a look at it. It should be puffing around the edges and still a little jiggly in the middle. But remember, you're going to keep that in the oven for another hour. So it's going to keep baking internally to a certain degree as it's cooling down. So we're going to go ahead over to the oven, and we're going to go ahead and put our cake in. So that's all there is to it. Now you can go kill some time and have some fun, or make something else, make dinner for the night. I don't know. This is gonna, like I said, it's a long process. It's gonna be a while before you can enjoy it, but whenever you do, you really will enjoy it. So next time when I come back, the cake's gonna be baked. It's gonna be out after the whole, basically 2.5 hours. I'll have it on a cooling rack, and then likely tomorrow, we're gonna go ahead and decorate it. So we'll be back. Hi, I'm back. So when we left off yesterday, the cheesecake was in the oven. It finished up after 1.5 hours baking at 325. Then I propped the oven door open and let it cool down in the oven as the oven cooled for another hour. Then I took it out and I put it out on this cooling rack, and then into the refrigerator overnight. And that's the ideal circumstance. So we don't need this any longer. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the springform pan and lift it off of here. It looks pretty good. I can tell you one thing, it's delicious. But you do get a little cracking. Last time I made it, I didn't get that, but it looks great. So we're going to go ahead and decorate this thing. I failed to mention yesterday that we're going to hang back on some blueberries, or have an extra pint on hand to decorate with. So I'm just going to, I'm using just Cool Whip topping and a star tip and a pastry bag. Okay, so then all we're going to do is garnish with our blueberries. And I'm just dropping them into my Cool Whip topping. And I'm going to use them up because I tell you, I've made this a few times and it is absolutely crazy good. And part of that is the fresh blueberries on top. So that's pretty much it. I think maybe we'll cut into it, take a look at it. Take a nice size wedge out of it here. I gotta tell you, I'm ready for a bite. Anyhow, I want to thank you for joining me and spending your time with me for this this episode. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like this kind of video, please hit like or subscribe, and I will leave links to all the products that are used in this video. So once again, thanks for spending the time with me. See you next time.